Greetings, this is Kazabez Makma back with another episode of the Meridian World News. We're here live in Hammond, Indiana, here in the United States. And we will be talking about our topic of discussion again today will be the coronavirus, COVID-19, and the whole phenomenon that's happening around this disease. There's been a lot happening in the news for the last week since we last broadcast. We're going to recap on what happened in the week, and we'll be talking about some of the topics from what will become our first investigative report that we're putting together, which should be released in the next few days. I'm very excited to share that with you guys. Here at Meridian World News, we are committed to bringing you honest journalism, bringing you thorough, well-researched information that can hopefully help you inform yourself to make better decisions. We need good information to make good decisions, and sometimes it can be hard to find. So we're dedicated to doing some of that work to help our communities be better informed so that we can be protected against maybe some of the agendas that some of these people in government, the big corporations, may have. We want to make sure that we are moving in the right direction. So that's what we're about here. We're going to go ahead and get started. This just in the last couple of days have been, there's been a lot more information coming out, and now more from medical professionals as well. One nurse in New York has come forward anonymously as having, some very serious concerns about the way COVID-19 is being treated there. This, again, just from the 29th of April, 2 days ago.
Video go viral. I'm sure I'm going to get some hate messages after this. Frankly, I don't care because this could save someone's life. I'm a nurse practitioner. I am licensed and certified. I am not on the front lines. I have a friend in New York City who's on the front lines. And for her safety, she cannot come out and say these things. So I am her voice. I'm not going to name names of people or hospitals for the safety of those involved. But this is her account. Okay, I am her voice here. I'm going to tell you what she has told me. She wants this to get out. Now, I'm sure this is not the case everywhere. I'm confident. I have friends that are in other places. They're on the front lines. They're in ICU. And it's not like this everywhere. But in New York City right now, in some of the hospitals, this is what is going on. People are sick, but they don't have to stay sick. They are killing them. They are not helping them. She used the word murder, coming from a nurse who went to New York City expecting to help. Patients are left to rot and die. Her words. She has never seen so much neglect. No one cares. They are cold and they don't care anymore. It's the blind leading the blind.
So very, very revealing words here. And after doing a little bit more research, and again, we'll be doing a full investigative report of these issues happening in the next couple of days. But she goes on to talk about the ventilator protocols. We keep hearing all the time in the news, ventilators, we need more ventilators. People will die if there's not enough ventilators. Come to find out, about 80% of people who are being put on these ventilators are dying on the ventilators. So are the ventilators really saving lives? And now some new information is coming out that the ventilators are actually putting too much pressure on the patient's lungs, creating trauma to the lungs. And that may be just about as much to do with the deaths as anything else. We also, a few days ago, or no, it was about a week ago, there was 2 doctors in California who had a video they did a press conference for the ABC News, their local ABC News, which went viral. Here's a clip from that.
Unknown. The unknown always scares us. So, in my opinion, what are the risks? What are the benefits of social isolation? And we think that the risks of social isolation are too high. You guys.
So this coming from, again, a doctor who's, practicing in New York. Doctors are now saying that there are, these doctors and other medical professionals are now saying or revealing that there's a shortage of medical professionals now, and now, floors of hospitals are being closed down. People are fighting for hours, and they're saying that there's not enough data to support continuing the lockdowns that are, shelter-in-place orders and all of this that's happening across the nation. They're calling for things to open back up. Well, I'm sharing this so you can just see another perspective. I'm not making any recommendations one way or the other on this because that's not my job. But go ahead and please just show this video that went viral on YouTube has been taken down.
Good evening. It's been nearly a week since a pair of local doctors held a news conference calling for shelter-in-place orders to be lifted across the state. 23 ABC's video of that press conference had garnered more than 5 million views on YouTube. But last night, YouTube removed that video, stating it violated YouTube community guidelines.
Okay, so you can see, YouTube again, censoring information that's coming out that could be, useful. Just because the government is saying shelter in place doesn't mean that maybe it's the most informed and well thought out decision for us to continue going based on. But a lot of people are calling for these measures to stay in place based on the fear that people are having about the coronavirus, and the fear, the panic that is spread throughout the country has become, a huge danger in of itself. The fear that we see throughout the world, but I think it's really becoming increasingly a problem here in the United States. And so we will call for these shelter-in-place orders to continue and even support being locked down, people being shut out of work, and all the other problems. Again, the question is, is this is this worth all the harm that's being done as a result, and as a result of the lockdown? And now again, that to inform our decision, we have to see again, how serious is this disease really, now that more data has come out, now that we have more experience dealing with it as a global community? And the second question is, what is the real harm taking place as a result of these lockdowns? Again, these are in our investigative report, which will come out in a couple of days. We will talk about more of those things. We can go more in depth, but we're going to continue with our recap of the world news. But before we get into that, I just want to share a clip from an exclusive interview that we did with a nurse, with a health practitioner in Florida, who, again, like the nurse shown in the beginning of the video, wants to stay anonymous because, these are the type of things people lose their jobs over. These doctors that spoke earlier, they own their own practice. They don't have to worry about being fired. But here, people who are just, your worker bees, these are the concerns people have to deal with, which is a big problem in of itself. But let's go ahead and hear what he had to say briefly.
I personally know people at hospitals, at skilled nursing facilities, all different types of medical settings that are getting laid off. They don't have work because there's no patients there. And so I'm thinking to myself, how much of a medical crisis is it? It's, especially like for my place right now, we're kind of fighting for hours.
So people fighting for hours at a medical facility during the time of a supposed pandemic. It's an interesting contradiction, but why this could be the case, is in large part because people are scared to go to the hospital because of the widespread fear. People with serious medical conditions, and you'll hear this in the report later. But he was saying that even there was an old lady who broke her leg and didn't go to the hospital for 5 days until it became too unbearable. She thought, the risk of getting COVID-19 was worse than sitting at home with a broken leg not being taken care of. That's the kind of hysteria we have going on. We are going to move on. The next topic that we have, the United States, or let's say the World Health Organization, is starting a global initiative for the vaccine development amongst multiple nations. Now, if you haven't heard the news, Donald Trump made the decision to withdraw and withhold funding from the World Health Organization over concerns about their, what he said, their failure to warn in a timely manner the global community about the threat of this pandemic. There's also been concerns, obviously, you've probably heard both sides of this, that Trump himself didn't heed the warnings of global health officials about the threat. So, there's this blame game going on. And, as a result, Trump withheld the U.S. funding from the WHO. Let's hear more about this new WHO initiative, which the U.S. will not be participating in.
New vaccines.
Several world powers, including the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and South Africa, joined what the World Health Organization has dubbed a landmark collaboration to fight the new coronavirus pandemic.
The global effort.
The initiative is designed to accelerate work on tests, drugs, and vaccines against COVID-19 and to share them around the globe. This was the WHO Director General on Friday.
Today, WHO is proud to be uniting with many partners to launch the Access to COVID-19 Tools Accelerator, or the ACT Accelerator. Our shared commitment is to ensure all people have access to all the tools to defeat COVID-19.
Notable absences from world leaders included Australia, China, and the US. President Donald Trump recently suspended funding for the UN agency after claiming that the WHO was slow to react to the crisis and called them China-centric. But a spokesman earlier told Reuters that although not attending the launch, the United States was determined to lead on global health matters. The WHO has steadfastly defended their handling of the pandemic and repeatedly committed to conducting a post-pandemic evaluation. More than 2.7 million people have been infected with COVID-19. According to a Reuters tally, nearly 190,000 have died from it since the new coronavirus emerged in the central Chinese city of Wuhan late.
Okay, so as we can see, this is a global race to create a vaccine, which will be used and used widespread across the globe to vaccinate people. And we have people like Bill Gates on record as saying that they want the whole global community to be vaccinated to protect themselves, so to speak. And for some reason, I don't know why people will listen to Bill Gates about this vaccine when he's the one who owns the companies that are producing vaccines and kind of posing as a philanthropist and a global kind of caregiver, so to speak. Bill Gates is also profiting off of these vaccines. So we need to hear from more than just the ones who are profiting. Even, I'm hearing Anthony Fauci himself, the one who's the advisor for the president on infectious diseases, is also in league with Bill Gates and on his board of directors. But that will have to be verified. Again, we'll be doing more investigative reporting on these matters, and these reports take time to create. So excuse the limited information, because there's a lot to dig through right now. Be that as it may, I just want to say that it is concerning, very concerning, that the possibility of having to be forced to take vaccines where you have no control over what it is that's being injected to you, and the possibility that people can use the vaccine or the lack of vaccine as an excuse for continuing to keep us locked down like this. We are going to go into a little bit more into a new bill that's coming out in Illinois, that they're claiming now. They are aiming to remove religious exemptions for vaccines in the state. Now, you can't really see it here, but if you pull up this this article on CBS News, the video at the top is about, and I'm not going to play this video, but the video at the top is about a child who died after the mother was listening to anti-vaxxers, or people who are against vaccines. So there's two things to this that we're seeing. One is that they're talking about religious exemptions. Now, not everybody who doesn't want a vaccine for themselves or for their children is objecting on religious grounds. People are objecting on health-related grounds, on freedom-related grounds. Is it my right to decide for myself related grounds? Can I have information about why and if and why I should vaccinate myself or my child related grounds? However, the focus will go on religious exemptions, because then it kind of throws people who are objecting to these vaccines in the boat of being some kind of religious fanatic. It's like, what is it about your God that you can't get a vaccine? You sound crazy, you see. But that's not really the reason most people are objecting. It's mostly on health-related grounds, which you're not hearing about here. Also, to put one example of one parent whose child died after consulting with people who are anti-vaccines, that does not mean that that child died because they didn't get vaccinated. You see, and the way that they'll put it in the news, even though they don't say it was because the child didn't get vaccinated, but that's the conclusion that you'll draw. So it's very dangerous to kind of follow the way that news presents things like this. For example, we were just talking about Trump withdrawing support, and you can go back to, or you can cut the, we were just talking about Trump withdrawing support from the WHO. Now, so many people are so anti-Trump that it's like, whatever he does, I want to think that the opposite is the correct decision. Where there's been decades of, since the WHO came out, there's been decades of evidence to show how harmful and how corrupt the WHO is and has been. However, you'll focus on the fact that, Trump withdrew his support from that, or Trump wants to open the the country back up, the economy back up. Because Trump wants to do it, that means it's dangerous. That means it's the wrong thing to do. But looking at the world that way, there's no thought involved in that. You just kind of reacting to whatever somebody else is saying. It's like, okay, this is my enemy. This is the one I don't like. So but forgetting that, people like Anthony Fauci, people like Bill Gates, people like the ones who are, supposedly Trump's opponents, those have equally been enemies to the public, if not more so. So let's stay aware and make sure to be thinking critically about whatever we're hearing and whatever we're being told. We're going to continue here. Another example. We're talking about how many people are dying of COVID-19, how many people are being, require, they need ventilators to survive, all of this stuff is coming out. Then we hear a week ago that hospitals are getting more money to list patients as being COVID-19 or being COVID-19 related deaths or being on ventilators. Here's an article from USA Today to show a little bit more. This is a story, and this actually was first reported by a Republican senator, or is it a senator or representative? A congressperson from Minnesota, that these hospitals are getting, 2 or 3 times more for people who are, and pull that back up, please, because I want to show the video there, actually. These companies, these hospitals are getting more money to list patients as COVID. So if a person, for example, is listed as COVID-19, having COVID-19, they're diagnosed with it, right? And then they die. And regardless of the actual cause of death, whether the cause of death was COVID-19 or something else, or if it was primarily more so the person had a heart attack, but they had COVID-19, which isn't known to cause heart attacks, they'll still say COVID-19. It'll still be listed as a COVID-19 related death, and that's actually scary, because they're inflating the numbers to basically put the public in a state of panic. What exactly the reason is, I don't know. But for this reason, it's just difficult to trust the numbers that we're getting, the statistics that we're getting on how many deaths there are. Then when you take into account the fact that these people who are being put on ventilators in large amounts are dying at a rate of 80%, that means in a place like New York, you have 3 things going on. 1, people being listed as COVID-19 positive who haven't even tested positive for COVID-19. People who are being presumed victims of COVID-related death who haven't necessarily actually, tested positive. They died without being tested positive, but they're presumed cases. And there's actually almost 4,000 people were added just a couple weeks ago to their death toll, which pushed it up over 10,000. So what's actually going on? The numbers are being inflated artificially. Then even the people who are actually dying and are actually diagnosed with COVID-19, it's very questionable whether the medical practices themselves are the cause of death, or if it is in fact the disease, or is it the ventilator that they're putting it on, or is it a different, related, or a different, pre-existing condition. I don't think this video, it doesn't look like the right video is coming up, but the video I wanted to show was about the ventilators.
Massive need for ventilators.
Greatest critical need are ventilators.
The COVID-19 pandemic has put ventilators across the U.S. in short supply. Here's why they're so important and why not having enough could endanger lives. Ventilators are machines that bring oxygen into the lungs. They are used on people who have difficulty breathing or can no longer breathe on their own. They're often used for short periods of time, like during surgery when a patient is under general anesthesia or while getting treatment for lung impairment. In some cases, individuals use ventilators for long periods of time and even for life. Those who are completely dependent on ventilators could die within minutes of being taken off of them. Ventilators blow air into the body's airways so that the air can make its way to the lungs. One end of the tube is inserted into the windpipe and the other end is attached to the ventilator. To get the tube into the windpipe,
Please pause right there. All right. If you saw the long tube that was put into the person's windpipe, I don't know if you've ever tried to stick something down your throat, but you will definitely gag as a result, and you definitely will not be able. And actually, I watched a video of the actual procedure of intubating somebody, in which they basically have to put a very long thing that looks like the Grim Reaper scythe that goes down your throat to push back your whole throat to be able to put that pipe in and put it all the way down your windpipe. Now, for that to happen, I don't know if you can envision this. Can you envision someone sticking something down your throat like this? Because if you can't, you'll understand that for this to happen, the person has to be sedated. And to sedate somebody, you need a narcotic. You need something like morphine, which is basically like injecting them with heroin. Now, you see on the video, they say a lot of people need ventilators to survive. Without ventilators, they'll die within minutes. Okay, but they're not telling you that in order to put that ventilator on you and keep it on you, you have to be sedated. And those who don't even respond enough, like sometimes you give them the opioid. These are the dangerous opioids that we keep hearing about in epidemic levels. People go to these hospitals and get sedated with these opioids and end up with an addiction, and then they can't get clean. You see, these are all things that are not being talked about in little cute videos like this, where they're trying to promote something that's a life-saving device when they're saying we need ventilators to save lives, and only 20% of the people who get on the vent actually survive. Again, more coming in our investigative report, because we're going to really go deep into this. This is some of the story, but not the whole story. But just imagine that these hospitals, when you're getting paid extra to list something as someone as being COVID positive, to list someone as being a COVID related death, or even to put someone on a ventilator. Now you have to really question, when you have a financial motive, how many of this COVID related situation is being exaggerated because of the financial incentives that people are receiving. That's a serious question to ponder. Now let's keep going. We're gonna go ahead and talk about Van Jones real quick. This is for our Black communities here, our Black viewers. Okay, Van Jones slammed for saying Black people must change their lifestyle choices. Now, if you read the article here, please read the article. It's a short article, or fairly short part of the article, where it's talking about what Van Jones actually said, which was basically like, you need to take care of your damn health, take responsibility for eating the right foods, putting the right things into your body. Now, people will say, oh, Black communities are food deserts. There's no access to grocery stores, fresh fruit and stuff, and it's so easy to go get a McDonald's cheeseburger and stuff like that. Okay, fine. It is, yes. Okay. Is there a deliberate plan to keep Black people unhealthy and Americans unhealthy in general? I would say definitively yes. Now, if you know that there is a plot against you, Now, the most powerless thing you can do is say, oh, the reason why, I'm unhealthy is because there's this plot against me and, this and that and this and that and this and that. Whereas, you can find plenty of examples of people who sell their link money so that they can go get their hair done, or they can get their nails done, or they can get their new shoes or whatever, you see. But then they'll say, oh, I don't have enough money to buy healthy food. You see, people make these kind of decisions, and it's irresponsible. Now, when someone wants to say, hey, you're irresponsible, then you'll complain, oh, he has a white wife, he doesn't care about us. Okay, whatever. Whatever he's trying to get at, whatever his reason for saying it is, if you're just going to say, because I don't like this guy because of whatever his decisions are, then I'm not going to listen to what he says. Whatever he said, whatever. Whatever he said is BS. That's stupid. It is. We can't make these knee-jerk reactions. I was just talking about Trump. You might not like Trump. I don't particularly like Trump either. You see, I didn't like him when he was on TV. I didn't watch his show. Okay, now that he's president, that doesn't mean that everything he says I have to say, oh, I'm against it. Maybe something he says I can agree with, you see. So it's not because I like Trump. It's not because I'm defending Trump. It's just because that just happens to be my view. Now, if I say that's my view and then Trump agreed with it, then I have to say, oh, I don't agree with myself anymore because Trump agrees with me. So I have to make sure to disagree with Trump. Then, how stable can I be in my mind? It does. You see what I'm saying? So, let's go to our next clip. Again, the rich getting richer here. This from a few days ago, showing that, and you can see, okay, with this pandemic going on, who's really benefiting, who's really losing. You can see small businesses having to stay closed. Walmart, Target, Walgreens, the big stores are open. The big companies have a way of staying open because they know how to make sure to, if there's a special tax they have to pay, they're paying it so that they can stay open. So Amazon, as you can clearly imagine, with so many stores being closed, so many people staying home, they are making a killing out here. Amazon is making a killing. And I think this Jeff Bezos guy is already like the richest person in the world, if not one of them, along with Bill Gates. Along with the other guy, I think from Alibaba, the Chinese company, that's also a major online supplier. You can imagine who's winning here. So, yeah, that's right. Jeff Bezos, that's his name. I said it right. He kind of looks like Dr. Evil from Austin Powers, but, that's neither here nor there. All I can say is, he's making a killing out here. Also, there's plenty of online businesses, like the big online businesses, the Walmarts and so on. They're doing great. So billionaires are getting richer while many other common people like us are suffering. Small businesses are suffering. People are being laid off from their jobs. They're not working. So follow what's actually happening, who's benefiting from all of this. Moving on the 27th, speaking of big corporations, Tyson, the giant chicken manufacturer, and I say manufacturer because it really is chicken manufacturing. It's not chicken farming. You see, it's chicken manufacturing. They excuse me, a couple of days ago, there was a scare that there would be an interruption in the food supply chain. Let's take a look.
Confirm ambulances at the Tyson plant. The food supply chain is breaking. That's the warning in a full-page ad from Tyson Foods, released in the New York Times on Sunday. It comes after one of the country's largest meat processors closed a massive pork processing plant in Iowa because of a coronavirus outbreak. The letter from Tyson's president going on to say, there will be limited supply of our products available in grocery stores until we're able to reopen our facilities that are currently closed.
Ambulances start coming to our plant. People start being carried out of there. And so we were always asking our supervisors, basically, what is it that's going on here?
NBC News talked to one Tyson worker at that Iowa plant who concealed their identity.
We didn't have enough material or masks and things like that to provide to us. So they would start giving us different types of rags and stuff that they had washed and cleaned.
Tyson responding, telling NBC News, we've been working diligently to protect our team members. Early on, we allowed workers to bring their own masks, and we even supplied some until we could secure surgical-style coverings, which we now require all team members to wear. Adding, we aren't aware of any ambulance visits to the plant for COVID-19 related reasons.
So, okay, this is Tyson. You know, if you follow the health and, you know, agriculture and you know, animal rights movements and things like that, you will be, you know, aware. And if you're not aware, please look into it, because it's a very serious situation where these huge, massive manufacturing plants, like you see that it's a plant, and yet they keep chickens in there caged up. You know, you can't even say they're caged like animals. They're caged worse than what you would want an animal. I mean, where if I'm a chicken and I'm this big, then the walls of the cage will be like here, and you can't even move, and you just live like that your whole life until they go, you know, pull your head off somehow, or some machine does it, and then you get sent through the conveyor belt and packaged. You see, it's a serious problem. You can imagine in a place like that, in a normal situation without COVID-19 being involved, that there's going to be a health risk from unsanitary conditions, and apparently many migrant workers working in places like this. You know, and the migrant workers, obviously your undocumented citizens coming from Mexico and so on, that are basically working for less than minimum wage because they're undocumented. You can't fight for a minimum wage when you're undocumented. So I don't know that this is for sure the case with these Tyson plants or not, but again, this is just what I'm hearing. Okay, and with Tyson, you know, we have to take what's going on in a historical context, okay? Because under normal circumstances, you shouldn't have one plant supplying the meat for 5 states. You shouldn't have one plant shut down, 2-3 plants shut down, and then all of a sudden there's a global food or a nationwide food emergency. And now I'm hearing too that in Calgary, Canada, a third of the states, you know, I don't know the name of the province in Canada, but a third of that whole province's COVID-19 cases are just in their massive meat packing plant or meat processing plant there, where they process cattle for Cargill in huge amounts. You know, they feed so many people in Canada and in the US. That's Alberta, by the way. So that's not normal. And again, we have a huge shortage of farmers, especially small farmers in the United States. As more and more people are leaving that lifestyle behind, they say it's boring, it's backwards, it's, you know, whatever, it's so 1800s. Well, you know, nobody wants to do it. They got tractors, they got automatic machines that they'll do it for you, but this is what you get. You see, the food supply chain is just very fragile right now because we're depending on our food supply coming in from all these different places that are far away from us, and we're in a situation in a city, especially like here we are in just outside of Chicago. Where are you going to go and get food if they don't have it at your grocery store? You see, it's an emergency. That's an emergency already. You see, if you're really thinking about your survival, that's already an emergency, because how long can we depend on this, supply chain before something happens? You see, all it took one virus, and then we might have an interruption in the supply chain. That's a big problem. But as you can see also with Tyson's warning there, and it's a real threat, to be honest. But that warning is really to spur some political action, because you can see on the very next day, Trump said, oh, no, you guys need to open back up. And so claiming that the meat supply is critical, which, food, is debatable about meat in particular, but food in general, because if people can't get meat, then that means they're going to be buying more of something else. You see, so it's still the general concern about food being in supply. Now, so it's a critical concern, and now, Trump right away, he's making sure to keep those plants open. But then again, the concerns that the workers have are real concerns. The conditions in those plants, I'm quite sure those conditions are really as bad as they say. So it's almost like a lose-lose situation. You lose on one side, you lose on the other side, whichever one you choose, someone's losing. So it's unfortunate, but it looks like that these plants are going to reopen. So far, it's nothing imminent from the supply chain, but just the risk alone, just the threat of that happening alone should be alarming enough for us to really take some assessment on our lives and think about how we can survive something like this in a worse situation than what we're in right now, because it can be a lot worse than what it is. Okay, what do we have next on our docket here? This is taking us into the 28th. Now we're going to the 29th, 2 days ago, which is where we started. Florida, we're now reopening, starting phase 1 of their reopening. And I think Georgia was the first to start reopening. Now we're seeing Florida starting to reopen. This is what they have to say.
Announced a plan to reopen his state. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock joins me now from Flamingo Park in Miami Beach. And Sam, what is the governor saying about phase 1 of his plan?
Allison, good evening. I think this might surprise a lot of people here, maybe across the state of Florida, as we were wondering exactly how he was going to roll out phase 1. Primarily, this affects restaurants and retail establishments. Up to 25% capacity will be moving forward for those places starting on Monday, everywhere across the state of Florida, except for where I am. So not in Miami-Dade County, not in Broward County, not in Palm Beach County. Those 3 major counties here in Southeast Florida are excluded from all of the governor's plans. In terms of other things that we've seen open up in states across the South, be it Georgia or Texas, he talked about gyms. Governor DeSantis said he's going to be looking at that, but he wants to see how this plays out in other states first. And movie theaters as well, he said, is a no-go at this point. We do know that movie theaters opened this past week here in Georgia, but that most of them, if not all of them, were pretty much staying closed. Those are the major headlines. I would add one other thing, which is elective surgeries are going to start again for the entire state of Florida. So there's no exclusion where I am right here under 2 preconditions. One of them is that the hospitals have surge capacity, and another is that they're going to be helping long-term care facilities and nursing homes in their testing and care in order to be able to do that.
Okay, so you see, Florida's slowly starting to open back up, and I want us to really keep an eye on this. Georgia, now Florida, and these are 2 of the states already that have been criticized for the fact that they didn't shut down as early as people said that they had to in order to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. Even Florida recently, a couple weeks ago, 1 or 2 weeks ago, reopened their beaches. Now, with that being said, so far we haven't seen a great spike in coronavirus cases. Now, I'll also mention this about Florida. One of our team members brought this to my attention, or just, reminded me of this yesterday, that in Florida, isn't Florida where so many people are going to retire? So many people going to retire, you will think, and that's the same thing they said about Italy, is that they have a high population of elderly, and that's why so many people were dying in Italy. Now in Florida, there's a huge elderly population, but you're not seeing a big spike in deaths there. So let's continue to monitor the situation and see, again, is it really warranted for us to continue to have to stay in our houses? Okay, we're gonna move forward. Oh, wait, before we move forward, I wanted to make a couple of notes, because you'll notice, when you are watching the media, you have to be very careful. There's subliminal stuff that they sneak in that you have to be aware of. One, if you notice when they first started the video, you say the Florida governor is announcing plans to reopen in the state, and then you heard someone in the background, "Oh no," you see, and that's already setting you up to have your opinion about, oh, it's a bad thing. Then you go, forward, and the guy is outside. No one's close to him, but yet he's wearing a mask. He easily could have pulled the mask down to his neck so that he can maybe breathe fresh air instead of breathing his own exhalation breath, which is actually harmful to his health, which that's a whole other story. But you see that he's wearing his mask. What is he wearing his mask for? Because he's not close to anyone who could possibly, transfer a disease to him. And it's in open air, and it's sunny in Florida. And they just talked about how the sun kills the disease. It can't survive in the sunlight. So what is really, the message here? It's just like, he's outside, so he's being a responsible citizen. He wants to put that message out. You see, keep in mind, these messages are put there on purpose. Now, what is the objective? That's the thing that we always should be questioning. All right, we're going to move forward. We have, a couple more videos that I want to show. One is from yesterday. There is now a lawsuit against Amazon from some of the workers about some of their conditions. And, well, let's just see what they have to say on that.
In our money lead tomorrow, frontline workers from some of the biggest delivery services, home delivery, have planned a May Day strike. Their national walkout calls on Amazon.com, Whole Foods, and Instacart to offer better protection from coronavirus for its workers. This comes as Amazon is facing questions about its initial response to employees who complained about safety. CNN's Suzanne Malveaux spoke exclusively with one prominent Amazon.com whistleblower who is calling out labor practices nationwide.
31-year-old Chris Smalls worked his way up the company at Amazon's Staten Island warehouse, even becoming an Amazon volunteer teaching kids how to code. But then the coronavirus arrived at the facility.
When did you first become concerned when you're working at Amazon?
Late February, beginning of March, I noticed some of my employees around me begin to fall ill, and a domino effect. It was very alarming for me. So I decided to raise my concern through my local HR department.
He said the response he got surprised him.
Their response was, nonchalant. They said that we're following safety guidelines. They understand my concerns. Our tables in the cafeteria were still together. We still were piling on top of each other.
Small says he was urged by supervisors to stay quiet, even after an Amazon employee in the building tested positive for the virus.
They told us, don't tell the employees. Don't tell the employees. We don't want to cause a panic.
Amazon responded, saying, when a COVID-19 case is confirmed in one of our buildings, we communicate this news to all individuals who work at that site. According to Smalls, a couple of weeks later, during his lunch hour, he led a small group of coworkers to leave the building and demand better protection from the coronavirus.
All we wanted originally was just to have the building closed down and sanitized. That's all we wanted. We will return back to work after that happens. After realizing the entire week we were just getting excuses and we weren't getting anywhere, that's what forced me to mobilize the walkout I did on March 30th.
Smalls was then fired.
So you see, when you speak out publicly, you get fired. But let's the brother's hired an attorney. He's fighting back against Amazon on this, and of course Amazon is going to say whatever they have to say to try to cover their tracks. As we know, these big corporations do all the time, like we just saw with Tyson. I want to say, first of all, hats off to the brother for doing what he did publicly and even organizing some of his co-workers to really, decide to say they're not going to tolerate. Because I know one thing I can say is, even despite the brother being fired, I'm sure Amazon had to somehow kind of address the brother's demands, address, not just his demands, but the demands of the staff who got together and did this, with him maybe being the ringleader. That they have to, when it becomes public like this, they have to respond, you see. And so I just want to say that for anyone who may be in a situation where you feel like, you need to speak up. The world is the way it is because people are standing on the side while the wrong things are happening and not speaking up, not saying anything about it, not doing anything about it. We can't continue. We can't continue like this. We continue like this, we see where the world is going with us sitting on the sides and thinking they're not coming for me this time. Because one of these days it's going to be you. And there's not going to be anyone on your left and nobody on your right to stand up for you, because you didn't stand up when other people needed you to stand up. This is the time right now for standing up. This is absolutely what time it is. And if you're not willing to stand up, don't blame anybody for what happens. Okay? You can see the writing on the wall. There's a lot going on that's suspicious. Again, the investigative report that we want to bring out is coming, and that's going to have a lot more information. So, excuse me, we have one more video, again, from the two doctors in California. We're going to end on this note, and then, again, more from this interview and the investigative report, more on the concerns about the ventilator protocols, more on concerns from different medical professionals, to really say there's something going on that's really, really dangerous, and the virus is far from the most dangerous thing out here. All right, let's play the video.
Maybe to go back to work. And
well, it's also at what point, who says what's safe? Are you smart enough to know what's safe for you, or is the government going to tell you what's safe for you? Who tells you what? As soon as they use the word safe, that means control. We know what's safe for you. You're too dumb to understand disease, you see. We know what's safe. And so they're going to use this model for different things. We got a bomb threat from China. Everybody stay in their home for 3 months. What? They are using this to see how much of their freedom can they take from you. And will you roll over and stay in your house? And it's working. And if you notice the way Americans are responding, if you go to any gun store in town, guess what they're out of? Ammo. None of them have ammo. I went to 3 of them. They said thousands of rounds have been bought. Why? People are mad. They're starting to post on my Facebook with their AKs going, let's roll. So what I'm saying is, let's avoid all that, because if you stomp on our freedoms, that has one ending, and it's violence.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
So if that's not scary, I don't know what's scary, because I don't think the people that I know personally are ready for a situation of revolt, a situation of violent revolt, a situation of anarchy and chaos. How are you gonna feed yourself? You see, if you decide, okay, let's roll. Hey, I know that there's people out here who have been preparing for that, but I know there's a lot more people that are not prepared for something like that. I went to a place called Cabela's. I observed this a few weeks, at least about a month ago, when they started the lockdown procedures. I said, I need to get some tents and I need to get some outdoor tools, because if it gets too, if that food supply chain breaks, we need to be ready to get up out of here and set up in the woods somewhere until things calm down a little bit. But I'm bringing that example because when I went to get the tents, I went to a store called Cabela's. And Cabela's, if you don't know, they sell outdoor stuff, fishing stuff, hunting stuff, and also guns. And there's a line, just like how when you go to Walmart, there's a line of people outside. And at times I've gone there a few different times, and at times that line was very long. And when I went in, and they say that it's a capacity of 50 people. When I went in and I went around, looked around, the majority of the people in that store were in line for something gun related, whether it was registration or whether it was purchasing, whatever it was something gun related. So this is, Hammond, Indiana to California, and, I'm sure everywhere in between, gun sales are on the rise. And they're not on the rise because people want to hunt animals. Okay. It's because you don't want someone coming to your house to get your food, because the grocery store is shut down, because there's nothing left. We're not ready for something like that. So for those who are so worried about the coronavirus, my question to you is this. If you look at the statistics and you see that less than 1% of the people who get the disease are actually dying from it, I mean, we're going to get into our investigative report. We're going to get into the statistics, but really, what's more dangerous between the shutdown, the lockdown, and the virus itself? That's the open question I'm going to leave you guys with, because in the investigative report, we're going to really get deep into the pluses and minuses that we're seeing. We see all the reasons why people are saying social distancing is working. We're going to be questioning all that. Okay, so be on the lookout for that. If you haven't already, like our page, like the page MW News 2020 on Facebook, and we're also on YouTube. Like our page on YouTube, subscribe, follow the pages so that you can be informed. We're going to be coming with much more content. This is a weekly digest, which we're going to start doing weekly. But in addition to that, we'll be sharing a lot of other links like the ones you saw on this show. We'll also be showing more frequent commentary on some of the news, every other day or so. will come with a little short video in addition to the weekly digest that we'll be doing. So I hope you got something out of this video that it could be informative for you. And again, stay with us because we're just interested in trying to make sure that we can survive what's going on around us. And there's a lot of danger, a lot of dangerous things happening. All right, so be careful, be informed, be critical, think critically about whatever you're hearing, and take care of yourself. Peace.